Hello everybody. What we're going to be doing is telling you a little bit about, or they're going to be telling you a little bit about the club, what it does, how you can belong, what you can do when you're here, the kind of projects that they do, how much it costs to join, all those key factors. And then later on, we're going to have a demonstration of a number of the pieces of equipment. So let's start off, Dave, and tell us a little bit about the club's purpose. Why would people want to join here? What do you do?
Well, the main purpose of the club is to give us old-timers that had to give up our shops and garages and barns and sheds full of tools for fixing everything known to man around the house and the farm. And there's usually no place to go after that, and you have to keep borrowing stuff from your children and all. So this was established to give one of the projects that the Ashby Ponds have. They have 125 different clubs, so this is one of them, to give them a place to go to work on things like they always did in their wherever they lived. That's one of the purposes. The other is to have kind of a fraternity where we can come together and we can talk and joke and make fun of each other, and at the same time fix products for the residents that get broken. And believe me, they get broken. We're fixing our 500th product this year. So it's just a place to have a good time and a camaraderie and feel at home and be able to get any tool you want, really. We have volunteer people come in with many pieces of equipment on a weekly basis, and we sort through those, we upgrade where necessary and all that. So it serves a lot of purposes for the community, but the biggest thing it serves is when you come here, you always have something broken in the move. And we fix about anything that's broken. Some people are amazed at what Kelly does here. He's the shop master, but we can fix just about anything.
How does one, do you have to apply to belong to the club? How do you get to be a member?
Yes, we have a membership form in our office on the other side, and it costs $20 to join the club for a lifetime, and $15 a year dues. And so it's a $35 entrance fee, if you will, and then after that, $15 a year. And
do you have to have any particular experience in woodworking, or can you be trained to be,
well, it's both.
Need what you need?
It's both. We like people to come in, and I'm surprised how many people come in that have the same machinery you see here, or you will see in the future. Some of it's very complicated, and some of it's not. Some of it's, screwdrivers and hammers and pliers, which are on the wall over there, that people know how to use and can use. Just come down. If you're a member, you come down and you know the code to get in, the secret code, and that gets you in. You do your little work like you would do at home, and then that's fine. If you'd like to join, again, it's $20 to join and $15 a year. But we don't charge anything for those who don't want to spend more than one fix down here a year. We go ahead and use the shop and let them use it and help them.
Are there any particular hours to the club, or can I come any old time I like?
Well, the any old time published in the residence handbook is from 9 to 5. Unfortunately, we cut a hole through the wall over there about 2 years ago, and we doubled the size of the shop, which put us up against Lou Lawrence and his wife. And then we have people above us, then we have people across the hall. So we've been asked to keep the noise down to at least 12 o'clock on a daily basis. And sometimes you can hear the noise all the way down to the elevator. I won't lie about that. But most of the time you can't. So the people that live above us and on the side of us are very friendly and know that we're doing good things for them.
Now you've got some pretty, as we'll see later on, some pretty heavy-duty equipment here. If you're here by yourself, let's say you come in at 8 o'clock and nobody else here, and you want to use one of the big machines, are there safety concerns? Maybe, as far as you want to talk about that, any safety concerns about, should I be using a piece of equipment by myself?
You don't use any machines unless you have somebody here with you as a safety precaution.
Mm-hmm. A power machine, you mean, like a hand drill or so?
Well,
yeah.
Power machines, hand drills, yeah. But that's for safety's sake. For myself, safety is the ultimate thing for us and for any shop. I come out of a high school, senior high school shop for about 17 years, and we had to have the kids safe all the time. So that transfers over to here, and we try to keep an eye on everybody. And if I see something not being done right after they have been, given instruction, we kind of remind them and so forth.
Well, that's a good question, a point you bring up about instruction. Let's say I have a particular project in mind, a personal project. I have a drawing for it, set. I've never made it before. Like here, you've got a board right there for a cheese board, for example. That's in my mind. I want to have it made, but I have no clue as to how to do it. Can I get instructions as to how I should go about doing it?
Yes. We have a form here that if you want to add to your own picture or whatever you want to make, called a bill of material. And basically what it is, you have a plan and then you work your plan is the basic procedure.
Okay, so let's say that my design needs a particular type of wood, fancy wood, something from an Asian supply, wood, mahogany or whatever. There isn't any in the scrap. I see you got a big scrap pile here. There's none in the scrap pile. How do I wind up how do I get that? Well, I have to pay for it, I assume.
There's many suppliers of wood in the area here, and you can go and buy what wood you need for the particular project. And that's what a bill of material would tell you exactly how much material, what kind, and so forth.
Okay.
And the hardware that goes with it.
Good.
Well, a good example of that is Dave Smith over there, who makes all the multi-wood products like you see here. He's constantly going to
Charlestown.
he goes to Charlestown to bet on the horses, but he goes
No, that's not the same
on the
thing.
way back. He goes by Percyville and picks up the kind of wood that you need and brings it back for you. So there's really no charge on that. We all go to Lowe's and Home Depot every other day.
So if there's any type of raw material, then that it isn't exist already here, then I have to purchase it. I assume the same thing holds true about hardware, screws, nuts, bolts, whatever, although I've seen a huge supply of such things. But how about the labor? Let's say I spend $100 on bits and pieces to do it, and I don't know how to do it. I'd like to turn the whole thing over to the shop, and the shop says, yes, we'll do that for you. How about a labor charge?
Well, that's a unique part of the shop. We don't charge anything for labor. We only charge for, as Kelly mentioned, for material you need to purchase, like hinges and bolts and nuts and brass screws and all that kind of stuff. And they will bill you directly for those when you finish your product. But we give you a letter that most people have read or will read when they pick up their project that simply states that we charge nothing for labor. And we charge nothing for material if we have it available in the shop, as on the wood pile or scrap wood or thousands of nuts and bolts we've acquired. The only thing that we charge for is the material. So then if you would like to make a donation to the club for the hours worked and so on and so forth, it depends on what the project was worth to you. If it was your great-grandmother's rocking chair and it fell apart and we put it back together, you might have a special interest in that. So a donation to the club is always well received, and we use that to buy our new saws and our new tools and so on and so forth.
Right, so some of the, let's talk about that for a moment. Some of the machinery here is purchased by the club or maybe donated. I assume that, let's say if I'm moving in here, in the process of moving in as the new resident, and I speak to somebody in the club, and somebody says, yeah, we need to have a new machine of a particular description. I say, well, I got one of those. So I assume the club would welcome a donation of a piece of equipment from a new resident.
You answer that one, Kelly.
Yes, if it's a piece of equipment we don't have and we feel we could use, we probably would give it a try. But we're at the point right now where we have everything that we can maintain or put in this shop. Now we're at the point where we're replacing. If somebody has a donation of a better machine than what we have, less that's been used less, then we would take it and then pass our machine on, probably on to Habitat.
Our Habitat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a demonstration of that is that you can't see it with wood talking, but we'll see it later on. The drill press over there was donated by a club member, and the bandsaw was donated, and the jigsaw was donated. So those 3 pieces of equipment were donated just in the last couple of years. And we didn't have a jigsaw, and we didn't have a small bandsaw, and we had an old worn-out drill. So it works, for all of us.
You don't have a whole lot of more room though for new equipment. You kind of
We'll make room.
you make room if you get the right one.
We have a patio outside on
Oh, that's true. Yeah, get a new tent. Do you have any female members? Any women who are members of the club?
Yes, we do. We have Dee Arnold and Grant's wife.
Oh, Nancy.
Nancy.
Nancy. Okay. Is there any outreach, particularly for new residents? Let's say as a lot of people moving in the new building, would the women, the females moving in there, have any idea that such a club exists and whether they would be welcome? I mean, this is sort of like a man's domain, right? I mean, would they feel welcome? I mean, is the point.
What if they call it a man's cave? So don't bother us, No. What is really neat that happens is that we've had meetings with marketing. So when you come in as a prospective customer, and you start going through, the amenities here and the things that are here that are unique to a lot of retirement homes, they just don't have this kind of shops. Then we ask them to ask the potential resident if they would any interest in a wood shop for fix-it-yourself stuff, and then they get an answer and a response. Well, about once every 2 or 3 days, we'll get a knock on the door, and it'll be a marketing person, and they'll bring in a person like yourself and say, here's the wood shop we were talking about. Can someone here give them a routine of what goes on here and what they have? And we do that. We stop the day and we give them a routine and cut the machines off and show them what we have, and they're very impressed. Most people have some percentage of what we have here. Some people have the whole 9 yards that they came from, and they gave it up to their grandson, and now they're sick about it, and they need a place to come.
Well, now I'm looking around here, and it looks quite clean. As we all know, wood shops create a lot of dust.
Yes.
And I don't see any dust. So if I'm doing a project, let's say, and I'm creating dust with the bandsaws and whatever else it might be, whose responsibility is it to clean up after me?
Me.
Okay. So there's an individual responsibility about keeping the place clean.
Use a tool, you clean up after yourself.
I noticed there's an exhaust device on each machine. Some of them are connected. So therefore, if I'm using a particular saw, then it catches much of the dust, right?
Much of it, but not all
Not
of it.
all of it.
We have a ceiling dust collector here. That you pull that chain,
Through the air.
and that sucks it in from all four, or from 3 sides, and then blows it out the side that you can see. Don't look too hard at that. It's pretty. It needs to be clean. But anyhow, and we have 2 huge vacuum dust machines on the other side. As you mentioned, is connected to all the pipes that are connected to each of the machine in the other room. So we have pretty good dust control, but it does get dusty because you just cannot get everything.
Nope.
When you have 5 or 6 guys in here generating dust from machines and or hand sanding, then it gets dusty.
Well, now let's say I want to do a project of my own, and it's going to require a particular piece of equipment of which you only have one. And it's going to take me working several days, more or less full-time use on that particular machine, because there's only that one. How is scheduling, or is there a scheduling process? How's that situation resolved so that we don't have conflicts of time on the same machine? Forrest, any ideas about that?
So far, it hasn't been a problem because usually if you're required to use a machine quite a bit, there's all alternate ways of making cuts and
Doing the same thing.
doing the same thing with other equipment, and we can usually work around it.
Mm-hmm.
and so far we haven't had any problem with that, really.
Good.
For instance, we have two band saws, a small one right here and then a larger one in the other room.
Right.
So you have two people working on a project, and then we have a small jigsaw over here, so we can actually have three people cutting out wood, and so on and so forth. So it hasn't really presented a problem. The only problem, is somebody's really bound and determined to finish that project. They better get here early.
Early. Yeah.
Because we do use the machines every single day.
Now there are some products which you make, which are we'll look at some of those in just a moment. But do you get, and those are exhibited at fairs and sold at fairs, but do you, at certain holidays, Mother's Day, Christmas, and so on, is there any kind of a rush of people who want to have a particular kind of product made for them? You're laughing. The answer must be yes.
Yes, there is, and that's one of our problems, because Dave Smith in there, he's the one that does the multi-wood items. He has become so popular with his multi-wood items, like that small cheese board, this large cheese board, and the pencil holder, and the TV controller holder, and dozens of other things, that once a year we try to get the windows in the hallway.
Oh, yes.
Up by the craft room,
yes.
and we fill the window, and we make 95 products. This is just maybe 20 of them, but we make 95 products, and Sven is our toy man. He's responsible for all the toys since. Well, it's
Probably needs a rougher surface. Yeah, this is not.
It needs a rug. If you
There we go. I can see that. Sure, because they're tied to the wheels. Very clever.
Sven's responsible for these. And we have a dog that has 4 actuating legs, which most dogs do. And all we got to do is put the string on this one and put the 2 eyes on. And this is, the kids just love these things.
So this is one of the things that's made for sale, correct? The dog and the toys.
Yeah, that's not for sale. I'm working on that product for...
This one?
Yeah.
This is a kind of a bird feeder, or is what is it?
No,
Describe
it's just a fake birdhouse.
Fake birdhouse.
You hang up and put a little fake nest in there and a fake bird. And it's for people who don't want to go through the bird seed business. But then I need to put about 10 coats of poly on it.
Some polish, varnish, and so on.
And then, because it was beautiful a year ago, it was forgotten to take in during the winter.
Oh.
And
it all suffered a little bit.
It suffered a lot.
Now, describe this one. This is a very, I'll make sure the camera gets a good view of it. So it's a bowl, and it's got a cutout in the front, and it's got a hole in the back. Several holes, 3 holes in it as well, on each of the 4 sides. Okay. So describe how that's used.
These are for the women who do a lot of knitting. And one of the clubs we have around here is a knitting club. And Bob Woodward's wife belonged to that. And she suggested this kind of a bowl. You just put your knitting ball in here and you go wrap it around to here, then you just set it on the floor and you just pull your knitting thread out as you use it, and it helps control that. And then the holes are to put your knitting needles through when you finish.
How clever.
In this hole through the ball and out the other hole.
Yes.
So the pipe's not a part of it.
No, the pipe is right.
Hello?
Anybody home?
New hearing aid, because it does holla. It is holla.
So that's part of the manufacturing press to turn it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's to construct it.
Put it on the lathe, and this is all a solid piece of wood. This is solid walnut, and this is
constructed.
This is what we do when we, in order to save wood, we put a fake inside in it and then glue it all together. And these are all the leftover solid walnut pieces.
Oh.
And these are all the leftover solid cherry and oak and mahogany. So we don't throw those good solid scraps away.
Sure.
So then once we get the block all glued together and cut on the band saws, glue all these together, and they've all been, you can see the joints where they've all been glued. Then we put it on the lathe and hollow out the fake wood, the plywood, which saves.
Oh, sure.
You can't, because if you glued this all together solid, then you have to cut it all out, and that's what you're trying to do, is save the good wood.
Save the wood, yeah.
So they can come in different colors, and this is a more of
More
visible,
finished.
more well, it's more seeable, I guess, in your camera. But this is a little dark.
That's true. Yeah, a little dark. Yeah.
Now these are in various stages of being sanded and sanded and re-sanded. You know,
Varnished and
but
so on. Well, now, I think one of the things that intrigues me about some of these pieces, particularly the multi-wood pieces like this, talk a little bit about how this is constructed. That is to say, obviously there are several different varieties of wood in there, different sizes and shapes.
how about if I get the man in here that does this, Dave?
Come
in
on,
here.
Dave. All right, so yeah, how do you start on something like this?
I start by, to make these little checkerboard things, I'll cut long strips of different colors and then glue them together in long strips,
Oh,
three strips together,
yes.
a light, a dark, and a light, and then I'll slice them across, and then so there's 3 in a row there, and then I have to take each 3 and glue them together.
Yes.
And make a square.
So you're holding it together with some kind of a press while they're drying, I assume.
Right.
Yeah.
Then when I have 4 of these, and I have about 20 or 30 of them back in a sack back there, I will take and I'll make these crossbars. And I have to, I don't know if you noticed that I have to dado this cut. So these 2 crossbars mix
Yes.
together, fit
Oh.
together.
Oh, I see. Sure, yeah.
And then I glue this all together, and it looks pretty messy when I'm done gluing everything together. And then I just put it on the sander and sand it down, and it comes out looking nice.
Yep.
And then you wouldn't believe how putting oil on it enhances the color of the wood. Looks much nicer.
You finish it with oil, not with a lacquer or
butcher-
whatever.
We use butcher block oil on
Butcher
this
block.
because it's going to be used for cutting food.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Sure. And then you stamp it with made in
yeah.
the Woodworking Club.
Made in China.
No, no, no.
Oh, Ashby
Yeah,
Pond.
handmade by Ashby Pond's woodworkers. Plural.
That's wonderful.
That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
great.
but again, Dave does the same thing in various formats. This is one of the best sellers we ever had.
For pencils and
Yeah.
pens and such.
It's for a TV remote holder.
Oh, I use it for that too. Sure.
Yeah,
What does it sell for when they're being sold?
15.
$15, which is quite a bargain when you think about it. Yes.
Well, we can't keep them in stock. Every time Dave makes 10, here come the
Can we
orders.
hire some more Daves?
I'd like to.
Yeah.
No question about it.
I
Three,
wish
4
I had
days.
some help.
Of course, he does the same thing with his
Yes.
cheese board here. You got, well, explain the wood, Dave.
Well,
You got
it's just
mahogany.
the same principle. I take strips of wood. There's walnut, mahogany, and maple. I guess there's a cherry, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, whatever I can find in the scrap pile,
Poplar.
I'll cut it up and glue it together, and then
I suppose if another way to do this, which is probably completely impractical, instead of starting off with strips that you glue together, you start off with boards, this wide, and then you slice it, slice it
Well,
longitudinally when you get done.
that's if
Make
we
100
live-
at once.
Yeah, make 100. Yeah.
Well, I've got pictures of these boards down in. My wife and I go on a trip to Atlanta every year, and we go through Smoky Mountains there at what's that famous town where all the crafters are?
Gatlinburg?
Gatlinburg.
Oh, Gatlinburg.
And they sell these same things for $60, $75.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got pictures of them on my iPhone. And Dave, what do you sell this for? 20?
22.
22. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the next event where these kinds of things will be sold?
Well, I'm negotiating to get the windows,
Okay.
Go.
Thanks, Dave.
but that's a double-edged sword because when Dave's stuff gets in the windows, along as all this other stuff, people say, "Aha, the bazaar's coming up. I think I'll beat the bazaar." So then
Oh,
all of a
okay.
sudden, have you got one of these? Have you got one of those? It's in the window. Yeah,
So the bazaar is one of the big events. When does the bazaar occur?
November
November. Okay.
16th or something this year, I think. I'm not quite sure.
9. 9. 9th.
November 9th?
Ninth,
Okay, good. That's why he's a shop master. So
He knows that
all.
stuff.
He knows more than anybody. I tell you.
These boards, our machine, our planer that planes these down makes them smooth.
Yes.
It's what tells us how large a board that we can make.
Sure. Right. The width of the
So that
planer.
determines that.
Yep.
12-inch planer we got, didn't we?
Yeah.
We just got a new one. We had a 10.
13. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I understand you have a saw. Maybe we'll see this when we get to see the devices
Yeah.
demonstrated. A table saw, circular saw, that if your finger gets into it, it shuts down instantly.
Well, it does more than shut down. It blows up.
Yeah, I understand it's a pretty severe thing. You really don't want to have that happen, but
Well,
hopefully it hasn't happened here.
Well, it's happened on a piece of material that was wet. So it was soft wood, and we didn't know it on the underbelly.
Uh-huh.
We ran it through, and all of a sudden, bam! And the whole machine shuts down. The blade is a 10-inch blade. You remember your grandfather's old wagon with the wooden shoe on the back of the tire?
Yeah.
The old tire being a metal rim.
Uh-huh.
And he'd pull the handle, put friction on that.
Yes.
Same brakes you got on your car today, but they're not made out of wood. The difference is that fits right in there about 1/8 of an inch away from that saw blade. And when it feels something soft,
Whammo.
I think it was microsecond, just bam, it fires that shotgun shell.
And it is a shotgun shell.
and fires it right into the blade and stops the blade instantly. Now I've seen the guy who invented it on TV, and he used a hot dog at first, and everybody said, "Oh well, that's nice," but and then he says, "And now here's the proof," and he ran his finger up there, didn't even get a nick. But you ruin a blade,
Wow.
and you ruin the stop. So that's about $70, but that's worth a finger.
Yeah.
And or a wrist. You know, a lot of people don't know how to run those saws, and they'll start cross-feeding the wood, and here's the blade turning here, and they don't realize that they get too close to the top of the blade. So
Well-
it's really well worth it for guys over 80 years old, believe me.
Well, when we actually get to see the equipment, we won't ask you to demonstrate that particular device, but at
Well,
least to talk about
We'll
safety
use your
issues.
finger.
I thought we would use you as a demo.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well thought. Well, before we do the demonstrations, anything else either of you want to add in a general sense before we proceed to the next step?
Come on, shop master, you lead off here. It's your turn.
It's been interesting for me in working with high school and junior high kids for almost 25 years. To come in and work with basically all engineers, it's a pleasure. Because for one thing, you have no discipline.
We're still kids. We're just older kids. That's all.
It's different kind of discipline, but it's a joy, really. So I really enjoyed it from
Good.
that standpoint.
But if you do something wrong at the end of the day, you find out about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, next time you use that machine, if I were you, I'd do it this way and not that way, which is great for us because we're all learning.
Yeah.
Kelly's been there and back. He's learned the hard way on most of that stuff.
Well, I must admit, from my own standpoint, I've had a few projects that I worked on here, and I've been a few occasions where I've used a particular piece of equipment, and Forrest or somebody else has said, well, if you do it this way instead, it's going to work better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So it's helpful to have those little subtle, small corrections before you make a big mistake. That's really nice.
Well, that's the beauty in the club. Everybody's here willing to help. I see some more members. Sven over there and Captain Kirk over here. He, everybody contributes, and you see something, they help. You know, like running it through the planer. You need somebody on the other end to get it when it's
Yes.
spitting out.
Yes.
And if you do it yourself, you're running around the machine all day long. Otherwise, somebody's handing it right back to you.
Particularly with safety issues, it's very important to have someone say, that's not safe the way you're doing it.
Well, let
Here's
me
a better way."
cover one more aspect there we
Yep.
didn't cover on safety. If you're coming in by yourself, we request, and you're a new member, or you're not a member, and you know a member, we always would like the member to be with you.
Okay.
That's almost an imperative, because the member is responsible for safety more so than anybody. And we just don't want a brand new member coming in. Have you used this machine? Oh yeah, I know how to use that. You know, all that kind of stuff. We've had that a few times, and we can't have that. But if you're using any high velocity rotating machinery, like the bandsaw, like the chop saw, like the table saw, like the jigsaw that's moving 3,000 RPMs a minute, number one is you never have a long sleeve shirt on. That'll get you caught up in there.
Yeah.
You know, but this is because it was winter when I bought this thing.
We're taping. We're not running the machine. We're just taping. Okay.
Okay. But anyhow, that's an imperative. That there's always two people with a high-powered machine. Now, you can come in and use a hand drill and a screwdriver and put it back in the right place and clean up after yourself. That's not a big issue. But we always, anything that it runs fast, we don't want anybody to get caught up in that.
Yeah. Well, safety is certainly an important consideration. Well, that's all I have. Why don't we now move ahead and have some demonstrations?
Okay, this saw is a relatively new saw. It's called a saw stop, and the reason for that is if you get any moisture or anything close to that blade, it's got a mechanism in there that will blow the blade stop immediately. So it's a big safety measure to keep somebody from getting seriously hurt. The table saw saws straight lines, as opposed to the saw behind you, the bandsaw, because it's designed, it can saw straight, it also can saw irregular lines. So that's the two different. This saw and the jointer and the planer are the bases of the wood shop to mill your material so that it's ready for your project. And to do that, you first have to go through the jointer, because this surface has to be, the wood has to go against that surface, and it has to be perfectly straight in order to get a accurate cut. It's starting it and stopping it. It has a multiple start and stop system on which one overrides the other, which is a safety feature. The fence can be used on this side of the saw or on this side of the saw. And the only thing you have to do is just pick it up and set it over there. That's basically what the table saw does. Now, the one other thing it can do is another wheel under here that this blade can be angled like that, so that you can cut 45-degree angles and anything in between 45 and vertical. So for projects, a lot of projects, that's needed. The other feature of a table saw is this is the miter. And the miter is used to cut the board crossways or to cut it to length. It's not used as much in this shop for that because we have a miter saw here, which is other name for it is a chop saw, and that's what it does. It cuts. This can be moved around so that it's vertical 90 degrees. So it's not used. This is not used for that as much. Okay, we can set the saw. It has a ruler gauge on it here. Let's say we want to make a 2-inch cut. We set it on 2 inches and make sure that it's down tight. The next thing to do is to raise the blade so that it's above the, it should be approximately at what you call the gullet of the teeth, so that it cuts clean. And at that point, you're pretty much ready to saw. I'll go ahead and I'll turn the first switch on here. When this stops blinking, then it's ready to go and it's green. So we'd be ready to make a cut. Okay, I'm going to turn it on and we'll make noise. I have set this off for 2 inches, so we'll make a 2-inch cut. Switch over here is all red, and you can immediately just push it in and it stops the blade from turning. Okay. It's called a thickness planer, and its maximum width is 13 inches, and the maximum height is 6 inches. So you can plane a piece 6 inches thick or 13 inches wide. That's maximum. We very seldom ever do that because this is a small machine. You just made the cut, and this would be a piece that we're going to be using from a bill of material, so we want to plane it down to a certain thickness so that both sides are smooth to be used in the project. So we know about where to start because we've got a mechanism in there that tells us that. Now I'm going to turn it on now, and I will run it through, and then Mitch will hand it back to me, and I'll turn it over, we'll reset it, and plane so we have both sides smooth. Now, once, if that's a piece that you're going to use and you want it to be a certain thickness, then we go to this machine, the planer. The joiner, the 6-inch joiner, called a 6-inch joiner because the head in this is 6 inches in length, which means that the blades are 6 inches in length, so that's the capacity of the machine, is 6-inch material. But we very seldom ever use it for that, for the simple reason that, like I say, we have other machines that does the work. If you look close, you can see one of the blades there. The primary use in this shop for the joiner is to join one edge of a board that you're going to run through the planer or the table saw, or both, so that it's straight. Because the edge has to be straight in order to get a straight cut. Now the planer would cut the thickness. If you want, take this down to say half that thick, you can run it through multiple times and change the thickness of it. But it still has to have a straight edge to start with. It has a gauge on here that you can gauge the depth of your cut by moving this called in-feed table up and down. That determines how deep it'll cut. We usually keep it at about a 16th or a 32nd. It has a lock on this side to lock it in place. Okay.
Dave's going to show, Mitch is going to show the
Now, yes, it's hooked up.
With any of these machines, we have a very elaborate vacuum system, which is over that, one is over in that corner, and one is right here in this corner. And before we use any of these machines, we have air ducts here that we open and close. We open only the one that we're using. Everything else is closed so it doesn't rob the air from the other systems.
Across it. The other thing that we always want to watch is that you notice the lines through here, that's the grain of the wood. And you want the grain of the wood, if it comes out of the wood like that, you want the cutter to come out of the wood the same way the grain does. So you want to always look at that. That gives you a smoother cut, whatever you're operating. And that changes it straight. If you have an original piece that's really rough and maybe have a little bow in it, you can take all that out of it so that it's straight against the fence, and that's what's important.
You can also do that if the board is warped. You can just take that hump out of it on the planer or the edger.
And so,
Can't be warped too much though.
well, if you have a board that is warped too much, then you have to go do some hand planing in order to get it. Because again, you have to have one flat surface before you put it in a planer, because all it'll do is duplicate what you're putting in. And so if it's crooked going in, it'll be crooked coming out. And so, I mean, it's just simple as that. Just the drill press, and of course, again, you bring your project if you had holes to drill in it, so forth, to finish it, use the drill press. Drill press is a machine that's run by belt system up at the top, electric motor at the back. It can be adjusted for different sort of speeds, where you want to go slow or where you want to go real fast, depending on what kind of a bit you're using or what you're trying to accomplish as far as the hole. This is a set of bits that can be used, and they go from a half down to a 16th. And this is a type of bit that has a spur on the end of it, so that when you have a mark where you want to drill, which I put on there, it's easy to center the bit on that point, and then it doesn't move away from where you want it. Really should back this up, because you don't want to. You see what happens. Back this up. What you're doing, but you should back up your material so that you don't tear up your table. And it's preset for the speed, unless you have an extreme different speed that you want to use. So that's about the main point of the drill. I didn't go all the way through. You can go all the way through. Again, this is what you call a keyless chuck. You don't need a key to tighten it. You turn it this way and it tightens a bit. Just loosen this top head, the bit drops right out. So it's it's kind of handy. You don't have to keep up with another piece. And the other thing about it is, if you have a key that goes in here, a safety point of it is, a lot of times people will leave the key in it and get turned on, and then the key gets stolen. So it is a safety point of the machine. Okay. The bandsaw has a fence that you can put on here and make a straight cut, but it wouldn't be as accurate as if you did it on the saw.
Yeah, I built that back up with some
Basically, what the bandsaw is a piece of metal, a band of metal with teeth in it. And it goes around two wheels in here, like two tires on a car, and you cut in between them. The blade is preset on the wheel so that it stays in place. It has a mechanism here called the upper support and the lower support that holds the blade in place. It supports it when it's cutting. The only adjustment you need to make is the thickness of the material. And you want to be about 1/4 of an inch higher than what the material you're going to cut. There's many different size and kinds of teeth that you can get in these depending on what you're going to cut. I'll try to follow this line down through here. And you can do round anything that's needed.
Okay.
This is a similar machine to the bandsaw, except it has a single blade and a much narrower blade, and it's used for cutting more acute. And again you have a height adjustment for the hold. This is called the hold down, which holds the material down on the fence. All right. And again, there's many different blades in there that can be put in here depending on what you're cutting and what you're trying to accomplish, of course. This is usually used for like if you're making toys or small craft material, but it's designed for thin material.